Welcome to our February cooking class. This is Hearty breakfast. Do we know why it's Hearty breakfast? Heart Month. February is American Heart Month, so that's why we chose this particular topic. Was we're going to talk about some good breakfast ideas that would also be beneficial for your heart. A lot of you look really familiar, so I don't know that I feel like I need to introduce myself, but I'm Rhonda. I'm one of the dietitians here at the hospital, and I have a couple of people joining me as usual. Jared in our nutritional services department, and Jackie is another dietitian that works here at the hospital. We also have another member that is working with us. We have a dietetic intern that is working with us through the next 2 or 3 months. Her name is Nellie. And she is going to be helping and seeing what we do this month, and then she's going to be also presenting next month as part of her training. So she'll be involved in it in that way. So hopefully you will enjoy it next month. Next month we're going to be Go Further with Food. And the reason we chose that topic, we have to have a reason, is that it is National Nutrition Month, and that is the topic nationally for National Nutrition Month, is Go Further with Food. So you get to guess what we're going to maybe do with that next month. We don't know yet either. So we do have some ideas. So we hope that you'll be able to join us with that as well. So we're going to talk about breakfast. And we all know, or we should know, how important breakfast is to our health and to our daily diet. So us as the dietitians really think breakfast is important for us to get started off properly the first of the day and to break that fast after we haven't eaten for several hours. So breakfast is one of the very important meals of the day. So hopefully you have some different ideas after tonight to use at breakfast time if you're one of those breakfast skippers. I don't want you to raise your hand. I don't want to know that you skip breakfast. But hopefully if you do skip breakfast, then maybe we'll give you some good ideas to try having breakfast at least 1 or 2 days a week, something like that. So Jackie is going to start with one of our first recipes now, and so I'll let her have this back.
All right, so we're trying a recipe that is pretty unique. Stick this back on. And so I don't know if I want to talk about that important ingredient or that unique ingredient right off the bat, but basically we are talking about recipes that are a little unique and recipes that hopefully you'll find which one is your favorite. Wanted to focus in on heart health, so these recipes are focusing on heart healthy oils. They're going to focus on reduced sodium as well as your vegetables, so for that fiber as well. And we're also watching maybe the cholesterol and total fat of these recipes. So we're kind of focusing on those ingredients. And with this first recipe, it's a sunshine seitan scramble wrap. So how many of you have heard of seitan before? Okay. You know, I really hadn't until I started exploring some different breakfast recipes. Seitan is a vegetarian protein. So what it is it's basically a wheat gluten that has been, it's a flour dough that's been watered down, so it's very high in protein, and it's a vegetable protein. So we're going to try it today because something with heart health is to get more vegetable-based proteins into our diet. So I thought this would be a unique opportunity because I didn't think that it would be a very common food that people normally eat. So it's a unique experience then to just try something new. And Jared's probably going to share his culinary experience with it because we've never cooked with it before, so we just really wanted to try it, and you know, I want you to be open to it, and if we don't like it, we can provide some different recommendations for maybe substituting that. But this recipe is great because we're using a whole bunch of vegetables, which Jared is cooking up over here.
Whenever you do anything with, like in this case, where you're sauteing the vegetables up ahead of time, and then you're adding them to a wrap, if the vegetables are supposed to be mixed together, be sure that you don't mix them together before you put them in the skillet, okay? You want to use your skillet as the mixing bowl, basically, in this sense, because all of these different vegetables become done at different time frames, right? So you want to start with your onions and your peppers, which take longer. You'll do your onions, you'll get them going, then you'll add your peppers, and then you'll add your zucchini, right? And the way you know when it's time to add your zucchini is whenever you can start seeing that there is a little bit of change in the outside area of the onions and peppers, okay? Either they're starting to get a little bit wilted. You don't want them to be quite translucent yet, the onions, if you're using a yellow or a white onion. Basically, you don't want them to be kind of see-through. That's a little bit too far into the process, okay? The point is to get all of the vegetables done at the same time, at the same consistency, right? And that's why you're breaking everything down into stages. Your zucchini or your squash will go in right about that 2/3 of the way done part, because it does not take long to cook. Obviously, a summer squash like what we're using, or a yellow squash, is a little bit more dense than what a zucchini is, okay? So it actually is better cooking with summer squash or yellow squash than zucchini, because zucchini can have a tendency to get softer faster, okay? And it's just the way that they're built. When dealing with the seitan, we got it in a powder form, okay? It comes in either a powder form that you have to steam yourself and season yourself, or it comes in it looks like dough, basically, is how it kind of looks, all right? And in that case, then you're basically just taking it exactly how it is. There's benefits to both, okay? The benefit of having the flour type, like what we did, is you can flavor it however you want, okay? You can add, because basically you take that flour mixture, you put it in a mixer with some seasoned water, right? Beef broth, however you want to do it, and get it all mixed up, and then you basically steam it until the internal temperature hits about 185 degrees. Then it's cooked all the way through. And then at that point, you're going to cut it into thin layers and let it sit. You'll want it to cool just a little bit so that it's not quite as sticky, okay? When it first comes out, it's going to be really sticky and it's going to be hard to manage. So you want to make sure that you're past that point. I was joking with them and saying that it was not very good, but I think it has an opportunity of being good. Okay, it's not one of those things that's a lost cause, and I would be the first person to be upfront and honest with you about that. Okay, you just have to take it from the standpoint of I'm going to make this how I want it, right? In adding the broth, adding seasonings and spices, because it's gluten.
Very mild in flavor. So
yeah,
there's
very
not
mild
flavor
in
unless
flavor.
you add it.
Yes.
And it's going to have the same chewiness and texture as meat, so you're still going to get that consistency of meat. And so that's kind of why we chose to make this recipe. So it could be a substitute for beef or chicken, or maybe it's pork or sausage. So it's just it's a vegetarian alternative to get more protein in a breakfast wrap. So, and what Jared's doing with these vegetables, he's also sauteing them in a heart-healthy oil. So I think he's using, well, for this recipe, we're using extra virgin olive oil.
Yep.
It could also be canola oil, maybe it's sunflower oil, maybe it's peanut oil, any of those oils. We really do recommend to replace more of your saturated fats with a mono or polyunsaturated fats. Your saturated fats are going to be like your butter. It's going to be things that are solid at room temperature. And your mono and polyunsaturated fats are liquid at room temperature. And those are like your canola oil, your extra virgin olive oil, your sunflower oil. So those have more health benefits to them. So using those in place of butter during your cooking can often help to lower your cholesterol, lower your LDL cholesterol. So there's good benefit to that. And it adds a lot of bold, smoky flavors.
Yep.
Did you bring the seitan so we could see it, or?
Well, you're gonna taste it in just a moment.
I did not. They're getting it all brought out to you right now. I actually was in the process of trying to find a cart so I wouldn't be late when I got down here. And well, if you've ever worked in a kitchen, carts are hard to come by. So I had to beg, borrow, and steal to get this one to get down here, and I forgot to grab the little portion I had of it. In a way, it really looks like a real deep, dark dough, really is what it looks like.
And it is
like a wheat bread. It basically is.
Yeah.
I mean,
Wheat
yes.
flour. So you would get this at a health food store like Mama Jean's, If you don't like the way seitan tastes, you could do tofu, and you could find tofu at Woods, you could find tofu at Walmart. So if you don't like the way that this tastes, there are other vegetable protein options like tofu, or I'm thinking there's one more, seitan.
Yeah.
What's the other one?
First with a T.
Oh, tempeh.
Tempeh or something.
Tempeh.
Yeah. You got it?
We have a question in the back.
Oh, yeah, that's the stuff that's ready to go. Yeah.
Compared to beef, let me ask, that's a question for Jared since he does the purchasing of the ingredients. What was the cost for seitan versus beef? What would you say the comparison is?
What we bought, which was the powder form, now granted, we're buying it from, like if you were to buy it from the store, you're probably going to pay almost twice as much. But it was right around $4 a pound. It was like $4.11 a pound. And the thing about this stuff is you can form it and make it to look like whatever you want. This was a darker color. You can see it as you're eating now. It's a little bit darker in color because we used a beef broth when making it, seasoned beef broth. So you're basically the lighter things that you put in it, the lighter it's going to be, or your coloration is going to be different. And you really can make it look and be whatever you want.
Online, you can get it for, well, this is at, there you go, Walmart. So on Walmart, you can get 12 ounces for $5.
Yeah.
And typically, a serving size of a protein is about 3 to 4 ounces. And so that's about the size of my palm, a woman's palm. It's about the size of a deck of cards, the thickness of your cards. So that's a serving size for chicken or beef is 3 to 4 ounces. And so you would have a few servings out of that 12-ounce package. So what do you think, taking your first bites in, tell me what your reactions are.
Could you substitute bacon?
You could.
But
I didn't say that.
might not
See,
follow
Adam never
the
yelled at me.
hard
Jackie
law.
yells at me when we leave. Don't you talk about bacon again.
I don't.
I'm just kidding.
But we're looking at a vegetarian type product.
Yes.
Something that-
Right, because a part of heart health is to get our plant-based foods into our diet. And so, one way to do that might be to eat it at breakfast. And so here's just one option for you to do that. So what do we think of it? Do we give it a thumbs up? Are we unsure?
Yes.
Okay.
Question.
Better
Very
than
good.
you thought?
You showed us that Italian, or was yours Italian, or did it have any flavor at all?
No, it was unflavored, yeah.
Unless you
It was
add-
it was basically in the catalog. It said that it was beef style, like ground beef style. And then I learned after that. I'm learning as you guys are learning about this stuff because I've never used it before. It really was because it came just as the liquid or the flour, like it wasn't done up in any sort of way. And they do it that way so that you can almost. In the processes of making it and mixing it, you mix it in such a way that it almost comes out in that clumpy ground beef type of texture. So,
You can definitely, if you don't like the flavors of this, or you feel like it lacks flavor, play around with that. Play around with the different seasonings, the different types. Maybe you're adding soy sauce next time, or maybe you're adding more garlic. Maybe it's more oregano. So you can play around with that flavor. You can also buy it flavored. So there are options out there. You just got to do your research on there. And also with this meal, you can also do the preparation of the veggies beforehand to get those stored in your fridge so that you can kind of make this on the go, to where maybe you already have everything already prepared and then you throw it all together. So I want to emphasize the whole wheat tortilla too. So we're using a whole wheat versus like a white flour based tortilla, and that's just to give us some more fiber. So there are different sizes of tortillas, so maybe you don't like a big breakfast, maybe you get that smaller tortilla. They have like 4-inch versions of those. Or if you're watching your carbohydrates, you can also get those smaller tortillas and then fill up more on the vegetables as well as that seitan. Okay.
and those whole wheat tortillas were purchased at Woods. So,
Just make a lettuce wrap out of it.
absolutely,
Yeah, and if
do
you,
that as
if
well.
you don't want the flour wrap, you could definitely do a lettuce wrap. And so you can, I think you would even be able to freeze this. So wrap them up and freeze them and then microwave them before you go. Because I know time barriers are often the reason why we don't eat breakfast in the morning. So
Have you ever had this many vegetables at breakfast? Have you? Good. Because we always want to get more of those vegetables, and we kind of skip those many times at breakfast. So this is a good way, I think, to get vegetables in at breakfast.
Do they put vegetables in like donuts?
Veggie donuts.
Oh. I can't tell you the last time I had a donut for breakfast. It's been a long time. It's been quite a while.
well, and another way to look at this, the Hearty too, is that they're hearty because they fill you up. There's a lot of substance there. So if you were to eat this versus a donut, what do you think you would feel full longer on? Eating that donut or this wrap? This wrap is going to give you more energy because it has protein, it has fiber. It's giving you a lot more vitamins and minerals. And so it's okay to have that donut sometimes, but you just want to think about what you're doing most of the time, and that affects your health. So I think we're going to move on to that next recipe. If everyone's ready, if I've answered all possible questions on this, we're good to go. All right. So now we're going to go to a recipe that probably is near and dear to everyone's heart. Pizza. You know, how many of you like pizza? We eat pizza every week, don't we, Rhonda? Every Thursday. Every Thursday we go get pizza. So you can eat pizza for breakfast. How many of you have eaten pizza for breakfast before? Yeah, so very nice. So it looks like this is kind of a common type of meal then, maybe for some of you. We can do some modifications to this pizza to make it a little more heart healthy. And so in looking at the recipes here, again, we're going to use a whole wheat pita bread for that fiber. You can add the egg. Okay, maybe, you know, that egg has protein. It has good nutrients for your brain, like choline. You know, I'm using the yolk too. I think that yolk is important. You know, some might be like, well, what about that controversial issue with eggs? Well, I think that whole egg provides a lot of nutrients, and that, you know, when we strip that yolk away, we're not getting those nutrients. So I think that whole egg is important. And that's what my recommendation would be, that whole egg versus just the egg white. We're using a turkey bacon instead of a bacon, and the difference is between those is that your turkey bacon, well, it's going to have the same protein as the pork, but it's going to be less in calories. It's going to have less total fat and saturated fat. And then if you get the low sodium version, it's going to be lower in sodium too. So this doesn't mean that the serving size jumped from 2 pieces to 5. The serving size is still the same. It's about 2 pieces. But if you're watching any of those things, maybe you're trying turkey bacon sometimes. We're using that turkey bacon. Again, we have a lot of those vegetables. So any opportunity that I personally have, and I encourage you to have, is, you know, add as many vegetables as you can tolerate to your foods. Vegetables are a great flavor profile. They have texture. So you can add your favorite vegetables and really get those in. And pizza is a great way to do that. So doing your vegetables. And then we also added some cheese. We added the goat cheese, which Jared, goat and Jared is what I just did there.
That's basically, you add me and a goat, that's what you get.
That's what you get. He's going to talk about goat cheese and why we used it, but really we're just, it's flavor, it's fat. Fat is important, so we're choosing these healthy types of fats. You know, on here we have part skim. So there's also controversy in types of fat, full fat versus low fat dairy products. So, you know, I don't think research has really been conclusive on the differences between those two and what that recommendation really stands on. But for this purpose, we're going to do the part skim because we have some other high fat foods like that turkey bacon, and then that egg is also a source of fat too. So we're choosing the part skim with this one. And then we're just adding those chives for seasoning. So Jared, tell us about the goat cheese.
Yes, a lot of times with breakfast pizzas, tradition. I know most people here probably eat pizza on Friday night, Saturday morning. You eat pizza for breakfast, right? Cold pizza. That's fine. But if you're making like a traditional breakfast pizza, usually one of two things are done for your sauce. It's either like a cheese sauce, right? Like from a package, mixed up with hot water, or you're using like sausage gravy, right? So utilizing the goat cheese, which is a much creamier cheese, is allowing you to still have that sauce consistency on the crust, or on the pizza crust itself, and not having the other nasty stuff, all the sodium from the cheese and the gravy and things like that that are just not as healthy. And I think one thing that we talk about almost every month is the point of this is to look at options of doing things better than you've done before, right? So like my breakfast, I'm going to try to do just a little bit better at breakfast today than I did yesterday, right? And these are some of those minor things that you can change that really isn't going to change the taste of your food, but it is going to result in a healthier food, right? Using the turkey bacon. Most people that eat it probably are going to be like, well, yeah, it's not bacon, but it's still really good. It has good flavor to it. And so those are the things that you can start doing. Adding, like she said, talking about the vegetables, adding the vegetables to it. And just looking for ways. A lot of times if I get a pizza, anybody ever go across the street and eat at the ASC building, the pizzas that they make over there? A lot of times when I get one over there, I just have them do olive oil on the crust, a little bit of olive oil and garlic. And it's really good that way. And a lot of times you won't notice a difference from not having the Alfredo sauce or the, fill in the blank. So doing those things can make a big difference. Plus, goat cheese is really good, right? And because it's a very strong cheese flavor, it makes it to where you don't have to add as much of the mozzarella across the top. You're basically doing the mozzarella across the top of the pizza just to kind of hold the toppings down, right? The recipe, I believe, calls to just break an egg over the top and bake it, and that's an awesome way to do a pizza. Obviously, in our setting, that would diminish the quality of the food that I would serve you immensely by doing it for 50 plus people, right? So we just used a preformed egg that we actually use over there for our breakfast burritos and stuff like that, just for the sense of making it, simplifying it so that you still get a good product to try. Because I know if I did 50 whole eggs on the top of these pizzas, it would not be very pretty by the time you ate it.
And it was a food safety
Yes.
issue too. We wanted to make sure that was cooked all the way through. For those who might have compromised immune systems, we just want to make sure we were cooking that egg thoroughly. So we scrambled it.
Yep.
And
Eggs are very dangerous.
We also, not too dangerous though.
Yeah. Don't not eat them. Just be careful with them,
We use a different type of flatbread, right? The one
Yes.
that we use over there. So
Yes.
this isn't the whole wheat flatbread, but it's just a different style of it. But my recommendation would be to go ahead and do a whole wheat or whole grain flatbread or tortilla even.
It is a wheat thin crust flatbread, but it's not a whole wheat or 100% whole wheat. So it is made with a wheat flour. So it's a little bit better than nothing, right?
In regards to talking about the olive oil, we do want to watch our portion sizes of our oils that we use. Our fats are really calorically dense, and so if we get carried away with how much we use, we can be adding a lot more calories than maybe we intend to. So just use it in moderation. A serving size is anywhere from 1 to 2 tablespoons, and so while it is healthy for you, we do want to kind of look at what else are we eating and using it in moderation so that we're not providing more calories than maybe we need to. What questions do we have on the breakfast pizza? Questions? Okay, well we're passing around those
Yes.
samples. So we should
English
be able-
muffin would work, right?
English
Absolutely,
muffin,
yeah. Yeah, you can do a small, absolutely. You're going to notice this crust can almost be like a cracker consistency because it is very, very thin. And so that's helping on the caloric amount too, not having a big, thick crust pizza that soaks up a lot of fat and juices. Although it is good, it is not the greatest thing on your heart.
Yeah, if you're watching our carbohydrates, going for a smaller tortilla, maybe you're doing the English muffin instead of a larger flatbread or tortilla. That would be definitely a good point.
What does Gouda cheese look like?
Goat cheese.
What's it look like?
It's white and creamy. It should be on
The
the
yellow?
No, that's an egg.
That's the egg?
Yes.
What do we think about the pizza? In anticipation in the front. One thing when you're shopping, looking for that Heart Healthy stamp or certification, that's by the American Heart Association, and they have gone through all of the foods and they've kind of indicated what foods are considered heart healthy. So if you're doing your shopping and you're looking and comparing a product and you see that certification or that stamp that says heart healthy, then that has already been approved, and that kind of goes by certain guidelines where they're watching total fat, saturated fat, cholesterol, and sodium, and also, I believe, fiber. So that's something to look at when you're doing your grocery shopping.
So another way to get some more vegetables at breakfast, right? Because we've got spinach, we've got tomatoes, we've got onion, to include those vegetables so we get that extra portion of vegetables and not just save it for lunch and dinner. So is this a maybe yes or no? Good?
Yes.
What brand of turkey bacon is that? That's it.
I'm sorry?
What brand of turkey bacon is that?
That's a good question. I believe it is made by, because a lot of our stuff is like made by Tyson, and then they package it for a different company. That happens a lot. Goodness. I can't remember for the life of me who packages that. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's what we use for our patients as well. The turkey bacon and the turkey sausage that we get in are actually both really, really good. The textures are different, and that's the thing that people kind of get hung up on. Like the turkey sausage that we use for patient use, it's really good flavor, but it's turkey, so it's not sausage and pork, so it's just got a little bit different of a texture. And I think if people know and realize that the texture will be different, it's fine. What company is it that makes a lot of turkey products? No? No? Ginea. Thank you, yes. Thank you, Tim. Ginea. Yeah. And it's repackaged under a different brand, but that's who makes it and packages it for us. So.
You could also do chicken sausage. Chicken sausage would be an alternative to something like the turkey bacon.
Yeah. You could also use seitan.
Or, yes. Very well.
Just because you want
Or you could leave it off.
Yeah, exactly.
You could just, not include the turkey bacon. So maybe you really liked this and we're like, wow, I want to eat this every morning. But, maybe we want to be considerate of the types of foods that we're using and we're alternating, because that variety in our diet is really important too, because the more foods that we eat, the more likely we're able to achieve our nutrient needs. So rotating just the types of vegetables you use in your foods that you make can help you get all those vitamins and minerals. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Rhonda, and she's going to talk about the last two recipes.
I have a question before you move on.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of ounces of meat or servings, how much is one slice of turkey bacon? If you wanted to do a chicken sausage substitute, and I was thinking about making it in quantity, how much of the sausage is equivalent to the one slice of turkey bacon for a serving?
You might want to look at, so if you look at that food label, and so you can compare the two. So a serving size of that turkey bacon is 2 slices. The sausage length, just depending on maybe the length of it, thickness of it, it's going to change. My guess is that it's going to be about 2 lengths. So, comparing that food label with that turkey bacon and seeing what it says. So,
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
We usually to try to look at, there's about 7 grams of protein in an ounce of meat. So you might want to look at that 2 slices of bacon and see how many grams of protein are in that. It's probably going to vary a little bit, but you should be picking up that. Okay, so we've got the pizza all down, right? Hopefully you can hear me okay. So our next recipe on the, yes ma'am?
That piece was just ate is 346 calories.
Well, I don't think that piece was actually that.
That's a
piece.
sample.
That's just a sample.
Wow.
But if you made the whole thing,
Maybe half that,
or maybe a third,
even a third.
because that's a 4-inch piece of the flatbread would be equivalent to that 346 calories.
Okay. Well, I think
Okay?
you guys
No.
ought to open up a pizza shop.
No, I don't think you really have to add up the calories on all these things because you're not getting the full portion size. It's listed on the recipe.
So I can have 4 pieces, not 2.
Right. There you go. So the next, the other side of your recipes, we're going to be looking at some muffins and oatmeal. A couple of my favorite usual breakfast kinds of foods. So we're going to look at the whole grain flax and banana nut muffins. So what does that say to you in that title? Fiber, 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 and more fiber. Okay.
Drink lots of water.
Drink lots, yes, drink lots of water. So when you look down through the ingredients on that muffin recipe, we have whole wheat pastry flour, so that would be a source of fiber. We have an overripe banana. What's that going to have in it? Fiber. It's going to have some fiber there. So we've got flaxseed. How many of you have used flaxseed in cooking? Okay. Some, but not near everyone. So when we look at flaxseed, that's really one of those things that has become more and more popular. It's a great source of, again, fiber. So we're picking up that dietary fiber. So it's one of the plant-based proteins. So we like it because it's a good source of those omega-3 fatty acids, especially the one that's alpha-linoleic acid. So that's, again, one of those things that does promote heart health. So we're throwing some in these muffins. So, Jared, have you done a lot with flaxseed?
Just in cooking classes, we've done a couple different recipes, and most of them have been baking. Muffins, cookies. I think we did one a while back that had flax seeds in the cookies, but not a ton of cooking with it. Of course, I don't bake. I really do hope that you guys enjoy the muffins, because our baker had a doctor's appointment and couldn't bake for me today, so
He did bake today.
there you go. So if they're not very good, you know who to blame.
The best way to use those flax seeds is to get them ground, and that grinding helps your body absorb the 2 kinds of fiber that are in the flax seeds. So you really get a bigger benefit of those flax seeds if they're ground. So it makes them. You can also take those flax seeds and make them into flaxseed oil. That's probably in some of our local markets now, because there's about 50 oils where there used to be about 3 a few years ago. So you probably can find flaxseed oil. My guess would be it would be one of the more expensive ones, but it is available. But you could all probably pick up the flax seeds or the flaxseed meal, and that would be appropriate to use in something like that. And sometimes you can just sprinkle a little on. You don't have to really use a lot of it. So it can add that fiber to your diet. So the benefits of flaxseed are going to be that it is high in fiber, but it's low in carbs. The carbs that are in it are really that dietary fiber. It's got those omega-3 fatty acids, that particular one that's that alpha-linoleic acid that does take some processing to actually become more usable in the body, but it is a good source of that. Does seem to help lower cholesterol levels, we think. It's considered gluten-free. It's a good source of antioxidants, so we call those things those cancer-fighting kinds of things. And it supports that digestive health. It's that fiber that helps absorb the water. So Jared is right. I hate to admit sometimes that he's right, but he is.
Sometimes.
You do need to make sure that you're increasing your water intake whenever you typically add something like this to your diet that you haven't been used to, making sure you're drinking plenty of water. So you want to make sure that this can also help you feel fuller because it's got that fiber in there. So that sometimes when we feel fuller, then we have less intake, which sometimes can lead to weight loss. It's kind of an indirect effect of it because we're feeling fuller, so we might not eat as much, and so we would decrease our overall calorie intake. So those are some of the reasons that it would be good to use that flaxseed in there. So the other things that are listed on the recipe are our fat sources are going to be soybean oil. We're going to pick up a little bit of fat from that buttermilk and then a little bit of fat from that egg. And I totally agree with Jackie in that I continue to use whole eggs and think they're appropriate, can be an appropriate part of your diet. And then we've added some walnuts, so that's also a good source of monounsaturated fat. So everybody's chewing away. Is it like chewy because of all that fiber in it, or?
If you've already ate your muffin, you're not crazy. Those are not walnuts. They're pecans.
They're what?
Pecans.
Oh, okay.
Yes. We
Try
had
the
a
walnuts.
supply issue with our walnuts and had to substitute with pecans.
So I made these at home, and I kind of thought the same thing. They're not very sweet. They're more of that hearty bread. And I sweetened mine up using an almond butter. So I added some more flavor, added some protein that way. So almond butter tasted really good on it. You could even do peanut butter rather than butter. So almond butter versus butter. You know, you're going to get more protein that way.
Did you add applesauce to it?
I think you could. You could even maybe add more banana to it to get more of that banana flavor. Applesauce might be another alternative, wanting to do the unsweetened version. You could even do like a cinnamon applesauce. You could add more cinnamon, you could add more nutmeg, just to get more flavor in there if you wanted. But I personally liked heating up my bread and then adding some almond butter. I thought that tasted really good.
You probably, if you did some of the unsweetened applesauce, you could reduce the amount of that oil, that soybean oil that you used. Or you could use canola oil also with it. I think that would probably work well also. So is this a maybe yes, maybe no? Okay.
More sweetness.
A little bit more sweetness.
And you can freeze these. So if you made a huge batch and then you froze them, you could, keep those in your freezer and then heat them up on the go in the car.
So I think what's important with a recipe like this, instead of changing the recipe and adding sugar to it or whatever you're going to add to it, leave the recipe alone, right? Because more than likely, if you change the recipe and you add a higher concentration of sugar to it or add sugar at all to it, you're probably still going to put almond butter, like she had said on hers. You're probably still going to do that. So if you know that's how you're usually going to eat a muffin or eat bread, you're going to be adding something to it, exclude that from the recipe, or leave the muffin just a little bit more bland, maybe not quite so sweet, and get your sweetness from what you're going to add to it regardless of the taste of the muffin. You know what I mean? And then that way you're cutting that down even more than what, because I know me, if I get toast, I'm going to put butter on it, right? And if I get a muffin, a lot of times I'm going to heat it up and I'm going to put butter on it. And so if we kind of work things that way, and this goes for any of the recipes that we use, we can cut back just by not adding duplicates throughout the recipe.
But what about stevia?
Yep, you could go that route.
If you wanted to sweeten it with a non-sugar, a substitute, you could do that as well. My caution that I usually share with most of the diabetic patients that I work with is just be cautious and not include it in everything. I just think then we get a bigger quantity than we realize, because I think they kind of sneak it in things that we're always aware of. So I just don't want you using a lot of it in a lot of different things. So moderate, slim, not much, that kind of thing. So we have one last recipe to try. If any other questions about our muffins? Maybe going to try them. Maybe going to try them with the chia seeds, or excuse me, the flaxseed in them. And you could add that flaxseed meal to a muffin recipe that you're already doing. If you didn't want to maybe use this one, and that would be adding a lot of good fiber to it. And I think that would be beneficial. So our last recipe is our overnight oats with berries. How many oatmeal fans? What kind of oatmeal do you prepare whenever you have oatmeal? Whatever you have on hand. Old-fashioned. Good. That was the answer I was wanting. Old-fashioned. I think that's a good choice. Do any of you use the steel cut oats?
What's the difference between the steel cut, the old-fashioned, and the quick cooking?
Okay, the steel cut is going to be higher in fiber, less processing. I have found that it has a much nuttier kind of taste, just more substance to it, and so you're going to be picking up additional fiber there. And then when you go to the old-fashioned, they just process those oats a little bit more. And then when you go to the quick cooking, again, there's more processing just so that they do cook faster.
Okay, so the steel cut takes longer to cook.
Yes, it does. It does.
It kind of steps down. Steel cut, old fashioned, and then your quick oats is basically not to be mean to quick oats, but it's kind of the flakes and pieces and bits that fall off at the end.
I don't mean to, processing is kind of like a buzzword right now. So processing, they're not really like adding or like changing things to it. They're just, breaking it down. They're grinding it down to that smaller granule. So they're not really changing the nutrient content of it. They're just grinding it down. So that's what they mean by processing.
There has to be processing of oats. You wouldn't be able to eat it if it wasn't processed. I mean, it's just like any other type of seed or grain that we eat. You couldn't eat rice the way it comes out of the ground if it wasn't processed in some sort of way.
So the recipe that we have for you, it does suggest you use steel cut oats. You can use the old-fashioned oats. It'll be similar, not quite the same. In fact, what you will be tasting is actually just the old-fashioned oats. So we also used almond milk in this. This is good in case you're lactose intolerant. It doesn't have the carbs in it if you're worried about counting those carbs. We did use full-fat Greek yogurt. That does increase our protein content of the overall recipe. And we're not really getting a lot of fat from any other place in this particular recipe, so we chose to use the full-fat Greek yogurt. It is a small amount. And the sweetening agent in this was maple syrup, which you could possibly use maybe in those muffins if you wanted those a little bit sweeter. You might try sweetening with a little bit of maple syrup. The cinnamon, the nutmeg, and then adding some berries, and then the chia seeds. What are the have you used the chia seeds? So good, we're getting good fiber sources there. We're getting some more of those omega-3 fatty acids. Same thing, we're getting those flax seeds. So we're going to probably get our portion of those if we do either one of these recipes. The berries, what berries do we use, Jared?
We use blackberries and raspberries.
Blackberries and raspberries. Those are my two favorite. I tried it with blueberries, and I liked it with blueberries too. So you could use any of those berries. So the key to this is you put all of these things in a jar, and you put it in the refrigerator at night. And so then the next morning, then you would be ready to eat this. How many of you have tried the overnight oats? Success with it? This is just a kind of a new twist on those, using steel cut, adding the yogurt, adding the almond milk, adding the chia seeds, and then the cinnamon and nutmeg. You put cinnamon in anything, I like it. So a lot of times someone mentioned earlier today to me, they always put cinnamon in their oatmeal. And then we can top it off with some more berries and then the almonds at the end. So you could actually do this cold, or you could do it heated. When you've done your overnight oats, have they been cold or have they been heated? Cold? I like to warm them up. I like to pop it in the microwave for a minute or so and make it kind of warm. But you've got it all ready to go. So if you're choosing not to have breakfast because you don't have a lot of time, Spend a few minutes the night before, and it'll be all ready for you the next morning. You can just take it out of the refrigerator, add some more berries to it if you want, and add the nuts, the almonds to it, or you could use other nuts. What nut did we use? Almonds?
I'm sorry?
Did we use almonds in those? Yes. We do have almonds. So if you do taste almonds, that is correct. There are almonds in this. So
They're garnished on top, so.
So try this and see what you think. I really liked it with the steel cut oats, but I'm not a big oatmeal person, but I really like those steel cut oats. I just like that nuttier, grainier taste.
We've used quick oats, excuse me, in our cafeteria for our breakfast and for patients for as long as I've been here, so 16, 17 years at least. And here in the last year, we have actually switched to an old-fashioned oat. It just looks better, right? You kind of get that slop, I guess is what some people call it. And that's
It's a
fine.
4-letter word.
It is no different than the old-fashioned oats or the steel-cut oats. It's still just oats, right? But it's just broken down even further. I like to see the actual grain of the oat in my oatmeal, and you're going to get even more of that with a steel cut than what you do with an old-fashioned oat. So just remember that it does take a little bit longer to cook. Steel cuts take longer than old-fashioned, and old-fashioned takes longer than the quick oats, right?
But if you do this overnight oats and you like it cold, then it's all ready the next morning. You can put it in and heat it up, but it will be all ready to go the next morning. But if you're doing it in the morning and you're cooking it does take longer. Nellie is passing out a jar and with oats in it for you to try this recipe at home. So you have the means to do this. This is with the old-fashioned oats. So try it out with this particular recipe. Put it in your fridge. Have it for breakfast. And then maybe you might want to try the steel cut oats. Quaker has come out with a new one that they're packaging now, the steel cut oats. Sometimes it was kind of hard to find, but now this is front and center in the oatmeal aisle.
I'm going to show you that Heart Healthy certification I was telling you about with that label reading.
That label there, so if you're looking at a product and you find this on it, it's been stamped of approval from the American Heart Association that it is considered heart healthy. And so again, you're watching those nutrients of sodium, total fat, saturated fat, and fiber also.
So now with these jars, you have no excuse but to eat breakfast.
There you go.
This doesn't look anything like I expected it to, but then I looked at the recipe, there's just as much yogurt as there is oatmeal. And then you added the almond milk on top of it.
You need a lot of moisture for those oats to soak up to be softened. So if you look at the backbone of this recipe, do you still have yours? You can really alternate this recipe based off of what you like. So as long as you can use any kind of milk. If you don't like almond milk, you can do 2/3 cup of whatever milk that you like. You can do a different type of yogurt. You could also do a different type of berry. Just as long as you have the oatmeal, the milk, and the yogurt, it would turn out well.